Overwatch 2 is the Sisyphus of the gaming industry. Let me explain. If you don't know who I am, I've been an Overwatch creator for the last 3 to 4 years, and I've personally played Overwatch since July of 2016, so for 7.5 years. I've seen the ups and downs, especially during the GOATS meta, God forbid that, all the way to the current day support fiasco and the 6v6 5v5 dilemma, and in this video, I want to offer a grounded and holistic viewpoint of the game's future going into 2024, in which I think the myth of Sisyphus perfectly explains what I think. But I want to leave that stuff towards the end, and you'll see why. Let's blaze through the past year. I don't want to regurgitate the same stuff everyone else has already gone through. This year we've gotten 3 new heroes, Lifeweaver, Illari, and Mauga, who I'll mention throughout. Overwatch PvE got partially cancelled, and it turned out to be very half-baked, and we got a sneak peek for the upcoming content, featuring a revamped competitive system in Season 9, gameplay of the new DPS hero Venture coming in Season 10, concept designs for the new support hero, Space Ranger, coming in Season 12, and a teased icon for the new tank hero in Season 14. Also, Overwatch launched on Steam around August this year and got review bombed by Chinese players unable to play Blizzard IPs. The Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal also finally fell through, which honestly nobody actually knows what's going to happen to Blizzard IPs because of this. And sadly, the Overwatch League ended, with Zoe giving one of, if not, the best emotional speeches this scene has ever witnessed. In essence, a lot of good and bad, arguably mostly bad, has plagued Overwatch this year. Lifeweaver was a completely underwhelming release, with the following 2 heroes being off the wall broken in order to compensate. The PvE fiasco was really the straw that broke the camel's back, with people who thought that the almost 2 years of no content since Echo's release was going to be paid off in the future. But I don't want to dwell on the past too much, because you can't change it. Instead, I want to look at the problems we can fix right now with practical solutions. One of the biggest problems being 6v6 and 5v5, discussed on the SVB Group Up podcast, as well as the support debate too. But there's one very simple fix that can solve both of these problems at once. I tweeted out the other day that the actual debate between whether 6v6 is better than 5v5, or vice versa, is actually utterly meaningless. Because the real truth is, both can work and both have clear pros and cons. But the issue is that the devs haven't adapted or changed how they want to balance 5v5. They're doing band-aid fixes to inherent problems either to do with the hero design or how they fit into that 5v5 format. Changing numbers isn't going to resolve how annoying an ability is to play around. For example, as many pro coaches have pointed out, supports have way more autonomy in 5v5. They're way more dynamic and fluid, going on flanks and dueling DPS for space rather than heal-botting down main. Kiriko exemplifies that with her kit, and we can see that in the Metro clip that blew up on Twitter, where Kiriko goes on a flank and duels the soldier, immediately teleporting out with no risk. If this was Moira, Moira has both a lower rewards because Moira does less DPS than Kiriko, and Moira also carries higher risk because Fade is a lower range TP that can't go through walls. This issue with Kiriko is unique to 5v5 because Kiriko never existed in 6v6, which probably explains why the devs are doing meaningless number changes like making her a food or faster for some reason, and never addressing what makes the hero powerful, which is Kiriko's low risk. I've talked about that situation more, you can watch that video in the top right. The same thing goes with Ana's nades. Ana's nade was never an issue in 6v6, because there was always an off-tank to mark or eat the Ana's nade, usually a D.Va or a Sigma, and sometimes a Zarya. But now, it can just feel like you nade the enemy tank and you win, especially against Mauga and Queen. Again, the solution to this more dynamic, utility-based 5v5 version of Overwatch is to decrease the power of the utility while increasing its frequency, which is going to result in more counterplay. The issue of Ana's nade feeling broken by not having a second tank is very easily fixed by just making nade decrease the amount of healing dealt instead of outright blocking the healing. This is not a 5v5 or 6v6 issue. This is an outdated hero balance issue. I forgot the creator's name, but he gave a good framework and many good examples of how you can rework these abilities to fit the 5v5 formats. A response I got by high-ranked players was, well, why even change 6v6 if it could also work? Well, first off, there's no point crying over spilt milk, and I'll get onto that in the last section. But secondly, there were and still are pros of 5v5. Reinhardt gaining so much more autonomy that simply couldn't exist in 6v6. queue times also being mathematically shorter because one tank instead of two, as well as that more dynamic gameplay point raised where hillbotting is less encouraged, etc. 5v5 was a fresh coat of paint that made sense if you wanted to call Overwatch 2 a sequel. Just next time you see a creator bring up how bad 5v5 is, ask yourself whether these are issues that could be fixed by significantly changing hero balance to better suit the faster paced 5v5 formats. I would say that we could just go back to 6v6 and we wouldn't really have a support problem, but then we'd probably end up with a tank problem. And again, it would mainly be balance issues. 6v6 can still undoubtedly work, but I think it's just easier and more practical with 5v5 since we already know how to fix it. Now onto the last part of the video, the game's future and what 2024 has in stock for us. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard of Sisyphus before because of the many memes, but essentially it encapsulates a man forever doomed to simply roll a boulder up a hill, but he never manages to do it. The boulder keeps rolling back down, but regardless, he keeps trying. I really don't think Overwatch will ever be back at its quote-unquote peak again, or at the top of the Sisyphus hill, so to say. We'll keep rolling and rolling the boulder up and up, with every step being a new piece of content, like Venture being released, or the new comp changes coming in Season 9, or maybe they manage to do something like a mousetrap and help out console players fight the Zimmers. Who knows? Overwatch League will probably become a more regionalised, grassroots system next year, which is great for everyone involved, and maybe orgs might come into the scene and provide livable wages, contracts, and sponsors to keep the scene alive. Maybe the devs will adopt the higher frequency, less powerful approach of balancing the support utility in the game, which, let's be real, is probably never gonna happen until a mainstream creator makes a dedicated video to the issue, but regardless, it's not gonna be enough. And when PvE inevitably gets raised up again next year, we're yet again gonna have talks about how Overwatch missed its big shots to become a domineering FPS game, like Apex or Valorant. Now, let me be clear. Overwatch is never gonna die because the game is too unique, and we know for certain that we're gonna get content next year, but we're just gonna permanently stabilize and almost never grow. The last 3 months on Steam charts do show that, and those results can be generalized across the Battle.nets and console, showing neither growth or shrinkage, which is fine, even good you could argue. But I doubt we're ever gonna reach the day where we can say our patience in Overwatch has paid off. Or in other words, the day where we can say we've reached the top of the hill. But here's the silver lining. Just like Sisyphus, and isn't a reason for us to not push the boulder back up again when a big pile of controversy, like the Steam review bombs or the PvE cancellation, inevitably forced the boulder back down at the bottom of the hill. Just as Sisyphus is able to find joy in the futility of rolling the boulder up the hill every time, knowing he'll never reach the top, we too can also find joy in Overwatch's never-ending mediocrity. The game is still fun and unique, especially casually, and I'm not going to take that away from the game. Aaron Keller's response to the Steam bombings is perfectly emblematic of Sisyphus' struggle. If we can't turn back the clock, then what can we do? We can keep adding to and improving Overwatch 2. That is how we move forwards. Just as Sisyphus keeps moving forwards, Overwatch needs to do the same next year. If you broaden your scope from the objective numbers of the game to instead finding joy in the subjective experience from playing Overwatch, we've got a lot to look forward to next year. And that's it for the video. As always, let me know your thoughts down below, and until next time.